listening to Give God 90, where we're not afraid of the tough biblical questions, because we will dig through the language, the culture, and the history to find the truth revealed in the words of our Creator.
I wanna see the light.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting us be part of your day. My name is Jerry Mitchell. Sitting next to me is, of course, as usual, Myra.
Hi, everyone.
And she's sitting here kind of doing what she does. She's playing with the music as it's the intro music as it's coming in and going out and doing its thing.
Yes.
Lots of stuff going on in the world. Some of it good, some of it bad. Here recently, there's probably been more bad than good, but that's to be expected in the times we're living in. We're going to get into some of that today. We've been looking at the way we treat our children, whether we value them or whether we devalue them, whether we have, what's a good way to put this? Whether we really prize them or not. Not just as parents, but as overall as a society, as nations, as cultures, as even as ethnic groups. And one of the things that we recognize, and it's easily recognizable, is that when a nation or an ethnic group values its children the way it should, it is successful and long-lasting. But when its children are devalued, or even when its adults are mistreated, that nation, that ethnic group, whatever that culture, whatever it might be, it doesn't last long. It begins to decline very quickly. And we see several cultures throughout history that have declined to the point where they no longer exist. You can't find the Mayans, you can't find the Aztecs. We know that they practiced child sacrifice, adult sacrifice. So we see these examples throughout history, and we look at Israel as just the opposite. Even though it has faced tremendous persecution as a culture and as an ethnic group and as a nation, it continues to be prosperous today. That's the best way to put it, I guess. It's very, very prosperous. Even throughout Israel's history, even when they messed up, even when they were in exile, they still maintained a very high value for its children. But that may be changing as we see some of the things going on in parts of Israel today, mostly like Tel Aviv. It's interesting that we see this. In Psalm 78, verses 1 through 8, would you like to read what David has to tell us there?
My people, listen to my teaching. Listen to what I say. I will speak using stories. I will tell things that have been secret since long ago. We have heard them and know them. Our fathers told them to us. We will not keep them from our children. We will tell those who come later about the praises of the Lord. We will tell about his power and the miracles he has done. The Lord made an agreement with Jacob. He gave the teachings to Israel. He commanded our ancestors to teach them to their children. Then their children would know them, even their children not yet born, and they would tell their children, so they would all trust God. They would not forget what God had done. Instead, they would obey his commands. They would not be like their ancestors who were stubborn and disobedient. Their hearts were not loyal to God. They were not true to him.
Now, what we see here in verse 3, David writes, that we've heard the stories about how great and how wonderful the Creator is, and we're going to teach that to our children as well. It's not just the rules and regulations, right? It's not just the instructions that we get. It's not the do's and the don'ts. The thou shalts and the thou shalt nots, right? there's more to teaching children than just a list of regulations. Now, we see this in homes as well, right? Hopefully, parents teach their children, here's the way you act in our home. And then they go on and they talk about their grandparents. When I was your age, how many parents haven't said that to their child? When I was your age, I had to walk to school uphill in the snow both ways. That's the big thing, right? Or now, since our generation's a little older, when I was your age, I had to walk 8 feet across a shag carpet just to change the channels on the television set. Didn't get a remote control when we were young. There's a lot of things that go along with the rules and regulations. You have to tell the stories, the good ones and the bad ones, so that these children understand why things are the way they are. David tells us why we need to teach our children not just the rules and regulations we get from the Almighty, but also all the things he did. The crossing of the Red Sea. But also everything else. Abraham. Abraham was just somebody minding his own business, right? And all of a sudden, he hears the Almighty speak to him. And he's like, you need to cross the river, come out of the land of your father, and go where I lead you. Abraham, as much as he is a patriarch, as much as he is a figurehead, he was just somebody who was willing to do what the Almighty asked him to do. Same with Moses, same with Noah. They were just people who did things, that they were asked to do. And we teach them about these things so that the children can hear, oh, well, if I live the way I'm designed to live, that will help bring me the blessings just like Abraham, just like Noah, just like Moses, just like, pick somebody throughout history that was successful. And the thing is, we're doing this so that they're not going to make the same mistakes that their ancestors made, right? We all hopefully know the stories from the ancestors. They were worshiping other gods. They were going their own way. And the Creator said, okay, you don't need to be in the land anymore. And he exiled them. And then they came back. And then there was some division. There was some things going on. And finally, around 68 or 70 AD, that was the end of Israel as a nation for just about 2,000 years. So now, why would they continue to teach their children all the great things, even though they're no longer a nation? Because they had a promise. And it's the children's duty to teach their children, so that they wouldn't make the same mistake. Now, are they going to make different mistakes? Yeah. Let's face it, they're going to make mistakes. Okay, we're people. We are inclined to mess things up. That's just who we are. It's what we do. Face it. You're going to make bad choices. But we teach these things for this reason. These children's children need to have the opportunity to choose the Creator. Biggest reason is he's just worth choosing, right? But when they hear the stories, when they hear everything that's happened and hear it gone over and understand why the exiles happened, why the bad things happened, and then they hear of all the great things that's happened. Look at what the Almighty has done for you. They have the choice. You can choose His way and, hopefully not make as many mistakes, not repeat the same mistakes, make all new ones, but you can receive all of the blessings as long as you're trying really hard. The Almighty is worth trusting because He is loyal. His promises to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all of the other patriarchs, all of the other people we read about, He's going to keep those promises. And it should be very easy if the children hear these things. They should recognize that He is keeping these promises. Things are continuing to be exactly the way He said they were going to be. And hopefully they're going to return some of that loyalty, some of that trust back. He's worthy of being trusted because, well, trusting Him brings the contentment and the peace, along with all of the other blessings that He wants to give us. Problem is, like I said, we're going to continue to make mistakes because sometimes we are our own worst enemy, right? You make a choice and you think, why? After things kind of go haywire, you go, why did I do that? Why in the world would I want to? If I had to do that all over again, I wouldn't do that. Well, Solomon tells us in Proverbs 29 that when you're angry, you're going to stir up some problems. You're going to stir up some trouble. But when you're mad, when you're furious, that's when sin comes in. And this is where we get the pride goeth before a fall, right? When you start doing things and you think you've been the one doing it, you're going to find out it's not been you that's doing it. But it's when you humble yourself that people will honor you. Solomon writes that whoever takes part in a crime hates himself or herself. Right? He hears all of the people cursing him, but he doesn't care. You're your own worst enemy. He also writes that the fear of man, the self-respect, even when you put more faith in yourself than you do in the Almighty, it's like stepping into a trap. But when you trust the Almighty, you're safe. Several times over the past year now, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, has made a statement. And he says, "You have my word as a Biden," right? There's a lot of places in the Bible that tell you not to do that, right? You don't swear by yourself. You don't offer your oath on yourself because, well, as Yeshua put it in Matthew chapter 5, if you swear by your own source, by your own head, you can't make one hair black and the other hair gray. Only the Almighty can do that. Now, I don't know what it is about our esteemed president, but his words and his actions display where he puts his trust. And he doesn't put it in anything other than himself. You hear it in the way he speaks, you see it in his actions, and you see the way he treated his family. And you see on public display, every time he is in public, well, let's just face it, the man's health is deteriorating rapidly in front of the world every time he's on camera. Now you can argue, well, he's old. I know a lot of old people, much older than him, that are a lot healthier than he is. In fact, I could probably sit here and think of many people that I've known much older than him that are far healthier than he is. And the majority of them, well, guess where they put their trust? Guess where they put their faith? It's not in themselves, and it's not in anyone else that's walking here on earth today. You know, when I think it was the episode just before we started talking about children, we were looking at the way biblical prophecy is being played out on the world stage right now. Excuse me. If you're having trouble seeing that, you might not be as familiar with the Bible as you think you are. The prophecies throughout the Old Testament prophets are coming to life. And many of them not in a way that we think they should be. You know, we have this picture sometimes, if we look at Isaiah 17, you know, a lot of people, they like to they like to think of Isaiah 17:1 as an indicator of where we are on this prophetic timeline, so to speak. Because Isaiah 17:1 says that Damascus will be a ruinous heap. Now, for most people, when they think about just a heap of rubble, right, they picture just a pile of rocks. So what they're in their mind, they get this vision of just a huge big pile of rocks. But that's not necessarily what is being talked about. Jeremiah 49 actually gives us a little bit more insight and detail about this. And that was really weird. I don't know what just caused that to happen. We had a little technical glitch here. But anyway, Jeremiah 49, 23 through 27, if you would read that for us.
This message is about the city of Damascus. The towns of Hamath and Arpad are put to shame. They are afraid because they have heard bad news. They are discouraged. They are troubled like the tossing sea. The city of Damascus has become weak. The people want to run away. The people are ready to panic. The people feel pain and suffering like a woman having a baby. Damascus was a city of my joy. Why have the people not left this famous city yet? Surely the young men will die in public squares of that city. All of their soldiers will be killed at that time, says the Lord of Heaven's armies. I will set fire to the walls of Damascus. The fire will completely burn the strong cities of Ben-Hadad.
Now, when we're looking at that, what's going on inside Damascus today? If you're not familiar with this, you probably need to expand where you get your news. I'll just leave it there. You don't trust some of the media you're seeing, because what's going on in Damascus today? Are people panicking and dying in the streets? Yes, they are. Absolutely. Are soldiers being killed? Every day. Are people miserable and wanting to leave? Yeah, absolutely. They want to get out, but they're not allowed to leave. The city is surrounded. President Assad even has used chemical weapons on his own people. The fire will completely destroy the strong cities of Ben-Hadad. That's not a place. Well, it kind of is. It's describing a place. Ben-Hadad is two words. Ben meaning son, and Hadad is the name of the ancient Armenian kings. Now, when I say ancient, Jeremiah's time. Okay? there were several kings named Hadad, and the cities under his leadership. Now remember, Damascus proper years at Jeremiah's time and Isaiah's time was not as big as it is today, right? There was the central part, and then you had the outlying suburbs, I guess, and eventually it all became known as Damascus, right? It's if you've ever looked at a picture of Denver, Colorado, you have Denver, which isn't that big, and then you have Golden and Lakeside and Lakewood, and sorry about that. and there's others, right? There's outlying suburbs that are their own communities, their own cities sometimes. That's the way Damascus was back then. So the cities of the sons of the king would have ruled over all of that. So what it is they're looking at the entirety of it all. Why do I bring this up? Well, Damascus is pretty much what we could consider a ruined heap of a city. Now, according to the Mandurah Catholic College Humanities and Social Sciences Department. Now, for those people who don't know where the Mandurah Catholic College is, it's on the west coast of Australia. And it's a fairly large, fairly well-known college. It has rated, as of June 15th of this year, so a month ago, it rated Damascus the number one least livable city in the world. Let me say that again. Damascus, according to the Humanities and Social Sciences Department of Mandurah Catholic College, is rated the number one least livable city in the world. It's a place you don't want to go, right? Nobody's going to vacation there anymore. Damascus used to be a bustling city of progressiveness, really. We used to hear a lot of good things when I was a kid growing up. Damascus was, just one of those places that was up and coming, and you just like, what's ever going to happen to this? Nothing can ever happen to this place. Well, it happened. It happened. Now, the reason they claim this is the least livable place in the world is, of course, because of the wars, number one reason. But it's also very polluted. The air quality is terrible. The sewage system is not, it's no longer existent. Okay, there is no more way to move wastewater away from where it happens. Is that a pleasant way of saying that? Okay. So we have all of these things, and that's just a short list. There's a lot of other reasons. Would you like to send your kid to school in a war zone? Probably not. Right? Now, we can argue that the Israelis do it all the time, but that's not actually a war zone. We'll get into that in a second. If you're able to see current pictures of Damascus, most of it looks like a ruinous heap. To be honest with you, it's one of the few cities in the world that's worse than Detroit, Michigan. Think about that. If, people recognize Detroit right now because it's just a terrible looking place. Damascus is worse. Have you ever seen a building that's been burned out? I don't mean just like a house that's kind of burned down. I mean concrete buildings that have been burned out by fire. They're kind of black all around. They're charred. They smell terrible. It's not something pleasant. There's a lot of that. When a bomb goes off in a building or beside a building, it's not like it shows on movies and on television, entertainment really doesn't have a good indicator. It looks good on TV and in the movies, but in real life, it's worse. Recently, they had the building collapse in Miami. That would probably be more pleasant than having city blocks burned out, right? At least it's completely down. You don't, you can look over top of it. You can not be caught up in the what's a good negative description for that? I can't think of one bad enough. But you get the picture of how bad I'm trying to paint this, right? You get the idea that I'm painting a drastically terrible picture here, right? We not only have Damascus. Did you know that? I think it was 2 weeks ago. Egypt asked the United Nations not to allow Ethiopia to begin collecting water in the new Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. There's an important. We've talked about this before on this show. The Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is along the Blue Nile, up in the mountains between Ethiopia and what is now Jordan. Prior to the late 1940s, Jordan didn't really exist. It was part of Egypt. So Ethiopia bordered Egypt when Ezekiel was writing his prophecies, when he said that Ethiopia would destroy Egypt. When they begin collecting water in this dam, the Blue Nile flows into the Nile, and it's its main water source. What's going to happen to the Nile River in Egypt is it's going to shrink dramatically. Ethiopia has the power now to destroy Egypt. You still think that biblical prophecy isn't in the news every day? It might not be in the news you're watching, but it's in the news. And I'm not getting these stories from some conspiracy theory website. This is like BBC stuff, okay? British Broadcasting. It's in the Jerusalem Post. Some of these are in the New York Times. And I don't want to take a whole lot more time with that. So let's just go back to Isaiah 17. Damascus is going to be in a ruinous heap. It's quickly followed by verse 4. It says, "In that day it will come to pass that the glory of Jacob shall be made thin." Wait a minute. It's talking about Israel being weak. And it says there's going to be hunger in Israel. There's going to be famine in that land. And we see that being able to happen not instantly right now, but as things continue to degrade. I said we get to talking about why I don't consider Israel a war-torn country. There's a difference between warring factions who are in uniform, which is what we have in Damascus and throughout Syria. There's a difference between that and terrorism. And it's foretold that terrorism would take place in Israel as well. So there is this faction of terrorism that exists in Israel, but it's not a completely war-torn country like Syria is currently. Children can go to school in Israel in relative safety. This is going to sound bad, but you can send your children to school in the United States. If they ride a school bus, and they go down the interstate, you have the opportunity for a lot of things to happen accidentally, right? There can be, and it has happened where people have run into school buses and children have been killed. In Israel, they get to school, on their way to school as they travel, a lot of things can happen. You have the rockets coming in. A lot of things can happen. So you have that element of danger. It doesn't matter where you live. You're not going to be completely and totally 100% safe. You have that element of danger. But in Damascus, Syria, you don't stick your head up from behind the bunker without the fear of a sniper taking it off, right? That's the difference. That's the difference. Israel will eventually be a war zone. Don't get me wrong. It is prophesied that Israel will be a war zone, and was it 2/3 of Israel will be laid to waste? I think it's like 2/3 will be laid to waste. Not just terrorized, torn apart, and it's going to affect everybody that's there. It's not just going to affect the Jews. It's going to affect everybody that's there. There's not going to be much left when all is said and done. Now, all of these things that we're talking about, we know are our fault, right? Because we are our own worst enemy. Humanity has devalued its life of its children, of its adults, and because of that, that is a direct result of why we're seeing what we're seeing in the world today. It's why we're witness to these biblical prophecies being played out directly in front of us. Now, there's other contributing factors as well. I'm not going to say it's all because we've devalued children, but it has played a very important role. All of the nations, all of the cultures who devalue children are the first to fail. Let me say that again. All of the cultures that devalue its children are the first to fail. We watched a video recently, and we talk about degrading people. And this gets a little complicated, right? There was someone who was a woman. She was surgically altered to be a man. Okay? So, however you want to explain that one. It's surgically altered. Married someone, and I didn't catch whether this person had also been one and flipped or how it went, right? But anyway, what the news story was about was this woman who was surgically altered to be a man is trying now to breastfeed a child. Yeah. If you saw the look on Myra's face, it was a cringe, okay? It's probably like anybody else. Why is this? Because originally being female, there is by design a desire to nurse, to bond with a child. Okay? It's that simple. But being surgically altered, this person cannot provide any nourishment to the child, physically. I'm not exactly sure how much nourishment they can offer that child emotionally. Okay? Yeah, I said that. All right? So, I'm flagged, right? But that's the reality. That's the world we're living in. When you devalue humanity and human life and children to that extent, is it any wonder that the world today is in the shape it's in? It just makes you wonder, right? What else? And I hate to say this, but it makes you wonder how much worse things will get before the Almighty says, you know what? That's enough. I just can't take it anymore. He's done it once. He will do it again. Not exactly the same way. There's a different plan this time. And that's why we tell our children to teach their children, about all the things that the Creator has done. Because it gives us this one little thing called hope, right? That one little glimmer of hope that we can see for those who choose to align themselves with the people that are direct descendants of Abraham. And they choose the Creator of the universe as their God. Not in a half-hearted, well, this sounds like a good idea attempt, right? and we, I know people who've done this. They go to a church service and it sounds good, and they're like, well, you know what? I'll do this, and if it keeps me from going to hell, then that's where I don't want to be there. It's not fire insurance you're buying, okay? Because that's the way they're selling it to you, and it's not fire insurance you're buying. You cannot make an empty deal with the Creator. It doesn't work that way. You can't fool God. It just doesn't work that way. You can't do it. It's impossible. If you think you can make a half-hearted attempt to trick the Creator of the universe, just don't. Just don't. It's not worth it. The only thing left that gives us hope is choosing to trust the Creator of the universe and live the way you're designed to live. When you do that, you can show others exactly where your trust is. You can accept His offer to rescue you from what's coming and live the way you're designed to live. And if you can't look at the news and peruse through most people carry this little thing with them called a smartphone today. You can peruse the news, right? Look through all the news that's there, and you can see, the difference in what's going on in the world. And if you know your biblical prophecy, you can plug these things in and be witness to, living in biblical times. How many times have we heard people say, oh, I would just love to go back and live in those biblical times? You're there, folks. You're there. You don't have to go back. It's come to you. And the message is still the same today. Right? The message is still exactly the same today. Live the way you're designed. Teach your children. Teach them the rules and regulations. You teach them all the good stuff He's done. You teach them the examples of what happens when you don't follow His rules and regulations. And you hope that they choose to trust the Creator because He's worth trusting. His loyalty and His promise to Abraham will happen. His promise to rescue you from the things that's going on will stand. But you have to take it seriously. You can't just buy the fire insurance. There is no get out of hell free card, okay? You can't have one. It takes trust. It takes faith. And it takes living that out, no matter what. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Just have a good weekend, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Until Monday, right? Right. Today's Thursday. Until Monday, many, many blessings, everyone.